Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coupe.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
So, Tom, there was a story that ran recently in the New York Times, and they also ran it in the Seattle Times, that talked about the technology that's going to invade our lives in 2021, primarily around the subject of shopping. And one of the places they talked a lot about was just the whole how the transaction has changed. How we moved from cash, we moved then to credit cards, and now we're sort of moving to contactless payment. I guess my first question is: do you think we'll ever go back to cash? Will people, or is this just again accelerated something that was going to happen anyway? And what do you see happening on the whole contactless payment side?
Well, I mean, I think that, we've seen a steady decline in cash, for quite some time. Obviously that was card-based, transition for a while, and then more contactless lately. And then clearly COVID has accelerated that. And I think it's one of those things that, like, the less you use it and the more you rely on these other ways to exchange value, right? Be it either, my phone to tap to pay, which is already linked to my card. Maybe it's linked to my retail loyalty card, or apps, maybe it's Venmo or something where I can, move money to friends. I think as you start using these, you realize how easy it is. It's hard to go back to reaching in your pocket for cash. I mean, I haven't had, working from home, standing in front of my computer. I haven't needed cash for really, other than like maybe paying a golf bet on a Saturday morning, although I rarely have to pay. But paying a golf bet on a
collect, huh? You collect, yeah.
right. So, and that's really, I mean, that's and that's mostly Venmo now.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, like, I think I've mentioned this on Morning News Beat before. I mean, my Whole Foods here in town, of all the aisles they have open, there's one that takes cash. Everything else is debit credit cards.
That's crazy.
And, I can remember it wasn't that long ago we were having conversations about did stores where people would get outraged by the idea that stores would not take cash. And now we've moved in that direction. And the other interesting thing in this, the article touched on this, is now as technology improves, I may step up to the checkout, and that the checkout will actually detect whatever the technology is that's on my phone. I don't even have to pull the phone out. It's going to all happen, and I'm not even going to have to do anything. Assumedly, I'm going to check my receipt later, but it's all going to happen in the same way that, in some ways, using the same kinds of technology that Amazon Go uses.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to think about, the security that you could embed within that, right? I mean, it's a little scary to think that you can be read, by a device, but you will have, in your app or whatever it's reading from your phone, you will have given appropriate permissions, and that's going to be super encrypted. The front end terminal is going to be super encrypted. And so it's, even less secure than even more secure, less risky than taking your card out and swiping it.
Although apparently now you have to be careful if you have an iPhone and a pacemaker. Did you see the story where now I guess Apple had to say, if you have a pacemaker, keep your iPhone away from it, because it can cause problems. Apparently, the good news is neither of us have pacemakers. We haven't had to worry about it. But they say iPhone, this can be a problem with certain parts of its technology. So go figure.
Wow. I'm sure there will be a whole, there's going to be a lot of work done, I'm sure, around, even continuing to advance the security, in your device, because wherever there's, financials to be tapped into, criminals are certainly going to try to devise ways to get there. So they're going to have to really work hard to stay ahead of that.
Or they'll just have to figure out ways to embed payment systems into the pacemakers. You say that's crazy. It could happen. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
One of the other things the story talked a lot about was the whole notion of chatbots. I'm a little bit cynical on the whole subject of chatbots, because when I interact with them, when I'm doing something online, inevitably I find out whatever the question is I'm asking, they're not programmed to answer it, which I find more frustrating than if they didn't have the chatbots at all.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a little creepy. But I mean, if you're, for the most part, when you engage in a human chat, right? That's human on the other end, reading the question that you're posing And then they're just within their own system looking up what the answers are to that. Like rarely are they truly experts, in what you're, what you're asking them about. But they can. The one thing they can do as humans is understand the nuance in your question. And it's, it takes machines some time to learn that. Yeah. But machines are going to keep getting smarter and smarter, and ultimately you can learn nuance, and they can become pretty darn effective at it. But yeah, I agree. It's definitely a little bit creepy, but ultimately can be every bit as effective as humans, and certainly a lot more scalable, and cost effective for businesses.
Inevitably, I suppose there'll be a time where I'm having an interaction with what I think is a person. I'm going to find out later it was a chatbot, but that's how good that they've gotten.
Right.
Another thing they talked a lot about in this article was the notion that things like Wi-Fi 6, which is this Wi-Fi on steroids, which is going to be able to handle so much more data and move so much more quickly, is going to be able to heighten the ability of retailers and other businesses to kind of offer virtual experiences. And they said, so now if you're actually engaged in a business meeting online, they can recreate the atmosphere or the environment of a boardroom or an office. Or if you go into a store, they can recreate the atmosphere of going up and down the aisles. And when I saw this, I thought this was interesting, but to me, that sort of defeats the purpose of going online. To me, that's about replicating an experience as opposed to reinventing an experience. And I'm not sure that that's where I think people's or companies' energy should be focused. Is that a fair observation?
I think it's a fair observation. And we've looked at some VR type shopping capabilities at CEP over the years. And I've had the bias for the most part in looking at these that, don't just replicate the store experience. First of all, a good store experience is going to be tough to beat with we've talked about this all the time, right? With just the sensory elements and the service elements and the true immersion of being in a live environment. If that's for you, that's going to be tough to beat or replicate online. And like you, I said, you should be able to build an online experience that's more effective, right? Make browse work really well to be able to easily find products, right? Offer auto replenishment to put the stuff you use, on auto replen, so you don't have to think about it. Make discovery and impulse kind of bring new excitement in the ways to do that. But as we look at VR more and we do research on it, what we're finding is, first of all, the technology is getting pretty good, pretty immersive, and you can make it so you can navigate the virtual experience pretty quickly and effectively. And there's a massive portion of our population that are gamers. And gamers, that they love that type of environment. They love the gamification or that immersion into these experiences, and they're very comfortable. They're very comfortable navigating that experience, right? So, you could enter a store, on an Xbox and be able to cruise around that store pretty quickly, have a great experience, have the store interact with you. It can be pretty immersive. So, I just fight, being the old guy that says that'll never work. I think there is something there. I think nobody has figured it out yet. It'll be interesting to see the work that's done toward figuring it out and what ultimately does kind of develop there.
Yeah, I guess. I agree with you. I sort of fight I'm the old guy who doesn't.
That's what it's all about. I mean, that's I would have run from this if I just let the old guy gene.
Yeah. Well, I will take your admonition in that regard. There was also another story that I thought was interesting, and this story is something that I know Michael is referring to in his column today. And it's a piece in the Washington Post that had the headline, "Baby Boomers to Retailers' Surprise are Dominating Online Shopping." And I thought this was fascinating. I'm going to just read you a quick passage from it. It says, consumers 65 and older on average spent a total of $1,615 online from January through October, a 49% increase from a year earlier, making them the fastest growing cohort of online shoppers, according to NPD Group. Frequency of purchases, meanwhile, climbed more than 40%. And though the trend is born primarily from necessity, older adults are at higher risk for complications if they contract COVID-19. Analysts say they expect the behavior to stick even after the pandemic is over. I would completely agree with those analysts, right? I mean, it's hard to imagine that people, I mean, for certain things, they'll go back to what they used to do before, but I think this has probably alerted them to all the conveniences that they didn't realize they could access.
Well, I mean, it is a bit of a perfect storm of driving that shift. I mean, you've had the necessity of COVID. You've had at the same time retailers that are quickly getting religion and evolving their e-commerce capabilities like real time. And so most retailers are markedly better at e-commerce today than they were 9 months ago. So, you've gone out of necessity, you've gotten to the experience keeps getting better. And yeah, so it does make sense to me that you're going to see that sticking. And yeah, this is a vulnerable group. And the capabilities, that they're getting, I mean, they make sense. I may see my mom, she's not an avid online shopper by any means, but the amount of stuff she's doing on her phone, where she never would have done stuff like that on her phone before, is just crazy. So yeah, I think, and that COVID lingers around longer than we would have liked. I think that just further, reinforces the behavior. So I think it's going to be tough to see that change.
Yeah, there's a quote in here from Chip Bergh, 63 years old, CEO of Levi Strauss. He says, "I don't think I'll ever go back to a grocery store. I'm one of those people who likes to go grocery shopping, but I haven't stepped foot in one during the pandemic. It works well enough." And that's in part because Levi Strauss actually has been shifting to a certain extent away from stores to online. So it's replicated throughout a variety of different.
It is. Yeah. I mean, throughout all of retail, you're seeing that big shift. I mean, I still, and I grew up a grocer in my early career. I think that the store experience, we all know the store experience is going to change. It's going to evolve. There's going to be more tech elements of the store experience. There is something very human, very enriching about a really good quality store experience with the sensory elements, and that I think it behooves retailers to not go all in on e-commerce. I mean, you should go all in on e-commerce, but as far as being good at e-commerce, but there's something to be said for getting the store elements right, and then just striking that right balance between e-commerce and digital with physical store immersive experiences.
But you talk about balance, so that's my last question would be, is there actually room left anywhere for that store that doesn't have e-commerce, that doesn't have Wi-Fi, that it doesn't have chatbots, and they delight in taking cash, and they want none of these modern accoutrements, if you will. I mean, is there room for that store anymore?
When you mention that store, it kind of brings me back to like my childhood, right? And like just going to the store and just talking to the shopkeeper and, buying candy or whatever you buy when you were a kid and giving them coins.
Right.
And that was certainly, so, it's so heartwarming to think of that. I just can't see that happening today. Like maybe it would be like a single store on an island that I just don't know. I mean, it's sad, I guess, but no, I don't know. Where would that store exist?
I don't know. I mean, and again, the first impulse is to say in a retirement community, but it's the people 65 and older who are growing commerce faster. And so, again, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's about striking that balance, but and having great fresh is going to be incredibly important, but also having a great e-commerce capability that kind of allows consumers to go to the store for the stuff that matters, to go to the store, but not have to go to the store for the stuff where it doesn't really matter.
I think it's going to be increasingly difficult to be all of one and none of the other, either way. On that, right? I mean, that's why you're seeing, Amazon move into physical environments. That's why you're seeing even the freshest formats, start to to evolve into e-commerce a little bit more. And every retailer's balance may be slightly different, and the way you serve your customers may be slightly different. But it's going to be hard to be completely one and not the other.
Well, that's a good place to end it. As always, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I always come away from these conversations having learned something, and I know the audience feels the same way. So that's this edition of the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coupe.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
We'll see you next time, everybody.
Thank you.